Hey everyone, what's up? How's it going? And welcome back to another episode here of the Crushing Small Stakes PLO course. In this week's episode, we're going to look into our big blind strategy and we're going to focus on how we can widen our defend range against the small blind steal. So the pot is unopened until the small blind. The small blind is raising and we are sitting in the big blind. Now what I see happening at low stakes PLO is that I see players sitting in the big blind that are playing too tight here and not defending enough hands. And it's important in this situation that you are defending enough hands for several reasons that we will get back to later. Before we're going to jump into what hands we are actually supposed to defend here and how we can widen our defend frequency, let's look into a comparison between how we are actually playing at this moment and how we are supposed to play from a GTO standpoint. If we look into a comparison here and first of all look into the GTO frequencies, we can see that we are supposed to fold only 29% of all the hands in our range. So the small blind raises, we are sitting in the big blind and we are folding only 29% of the hands. Now we're supposed to call 58% of the time and 3-bet 13% of the time. So you can see how many hands we're actually supposed to defend here. And I'm pretty sure for those of you who are watching this, you're not defending all these hands. So let's look into a population number here. If we look into the population, so how you play, how I play, how many players together are playing on an average number here, we can see that the population is folding around 46% of the time. So this number is much higher than the 29% that we are supposed to fold only. We're calling 43% and we're 3-betting 11%. I also looked into my own stats and I also see that I myself are not defending enough here. I fold 41%, so a little bit less than the population tendency, which is fine, which is good. But I still should expand my calling and my defending range here basically with a lot of hands. I'm calling 48% of the time and I'm 3-betting 11% of the time. Now it's important to recognize here that we're not always supposed to follow blindly GTO. But we have to keep this in mind and we have to make sure that we are expanding our calling, our defending range with a good amount of hands here for several reasons. Now one of the things that we should keep in mind is that sometimes the small blind's open raising range is very tight and narrow. And then it's fine to not defend all these hands. But on average, the small blind's raising range is very similar to what we see in GTO settings. So that frequency of around 40% of hands, that is also played very often by the population. And therefore, it's important for us to realize that we can and we should defend more hands than that we are currently doing. Now, why is it that we can play so many hands, big blind versus small blind? There are two big reasons for it. The first one is that we are guaranteed to play a heads-up pot in position. And this has multiple advantages. We're closing the action pre-flop. In other words, there's no one else sitting behind us anymore. And there's no risk to getting squeezed. And there's also no risk someone else is entering the pot at this point. So we're not playing a multi-way pot, which is quite rare, especially at low stakes PLO. Secondly, we have an informational advantage going post-flop. Because we're in position, we always know the action of the out-of-position player first, which gives us an informational advantage going post-flop. And thirdly, we can manage the size of the pot post-flop quite well because we're in position. We have the option, if the small blind checks to us, to take a free card as well. And therefore, we have good control of the size of the pot very often, which is one of the biggest advantages of playing in any situation when you're in position. Now, the second big advantage here is that the price is very good here. We already invested the big blind. So if the small blind raises to full pot, which is what is very often happening here, we are risking 2 big blinds only to win 4 big blinds. And that is quite a good price, of course. And the price here is different than, for example, if we cold call in other situations pre-flop, because we didn't invest anything yet. And therefore, the investment that we have to make relatively is much bigger. Now, so these are the two main reasons why we can play so many hands in the big blind. Now let's look into some examples here. And let's look into what hands we can actually start widening our defend frequency with. First of all, I want to show you the overall strategy here. Now this is quite overwhelming, I know it. There's a lot of numbers, a lot of categories. There's no need for you to memorize it at all. But you can see here, or you can take a screenshot of it to get a better understanding of it. But here you can see all the 18 categories again. We can see how often we are supposed to fold, call, and 3-bet with them. This graph, this chart is made with our PLO trainer. So you can also create this yourself. Just jump into the PLO trainer, filter for big blind versus small blind defend, and create this chart automatically. And then you can dive deeper into each one of these to get a good understanding of what hands are actually in there. Now today we're going to look into a few of these categories, especially the ones that are very marginal and weak. That section of our range is what we are supposed to look into here, because the strong hands and the medium strong hands, I know we know what we should do that. We're mainly calling them. The best ones we are 3-betting. So we're going to focus on that bottom part of our range and what hands we can actually add in there. So we're going to look into the category 6 here, single suited and rainbow mid-low pairs. We're going to look in category 8, single suited and rainbow rundowns with 0, 1, 2 gaps. We're going to look into category 14, the single suited and rainbow 3-card rundowns with a Broadway. And then lastly, the single suited racked category, category 16. First of all, single suited and rainbow mid-low pairs. So these are pairs 9s until deuces. And what we see here is that, first of all, the higher the pair is, the more we are defending. And I'm going to show you some examples here and some frequencies to give you an understanding of what hands we're actually talking about here. So remember, we're talking about the bottom defend frequencies here. And we're going to look into what we are supposed to call, which hands we are capable of adding into our calling range here. So if we look at hands that are 9s, so 9-9-XX, we can see that a bottom defend hand would be 9-9-5 deuce. We have a 9 high suit here. There is, although the hand is pretty gappy, we do have a pair of 9s. And as you can see, a pair of 9s is defended 95% of the time. So that is a very large number. And most of the 9s basically here are simply a defend. Now what about 7s? If the pair gets weaker, we see that we need slightly better connectivity here, but we still are defending 80% of the time here. So a hand like 7-7-8 deuce single suited is still a defend. If we look at lower pairs like 5s, we can see that the defend frequency for this category drops again, this time to 73% of the time. And we need either a little bit better connectivity again, a higher suit. For example, here with the queen high suit, like queen 5-5-3 with the queen high suit is good enough to defend here. And therefore, make sure that if the pair gets weaker, that you are looking for a little bit more connectivity or higher suit. But in general, you can still go extremely wide here, as you can see. Now, if we look at 3s and also deuces, the defend frequency drops significantly to around 50%. Like 3s is 46, and if I remember correctly, like deuces are a little bit similar, maybe even a little bit less defend frequency. But here, the connectivity and the suit becomes a little bit more important. A hand like Jack 9-3-3 is good enough to defend here with the Jack 9 connectivity there and the suitedness of the Jack. We have a pair, but weaker combinations would actually be a fold. But it's this gives you a good idea of how wide we are actually supposed to defend here. Let's look into single-suited rundowns, single-suited rainbow rundowns with 0, 1, 2 gaps. In general, this category is quite strong because we're so good connected. We can defend most of these hands here, but there are some hands that we are also supposed to fold, and there are some very marginal combinations in here that I'm pretty sure most of you are folding at the moment. If you look at single-suited ones, like we're defending most of these hands. Single-suited, I mean like 2 suits only. So for example, here we have the 4 and the 3 of diamonds. So not 3 diamonds or 4 diamonds. We can see that with those combinations, we're calling or defending 86% of the time. And a hand like 5-4-3 deuce would be a defend here. Although this hand is a fold in any situation, from any position around the table, no matter what. like big blind versus small blind, this hand is suddenly good enough to play. A triple suited hand would be 9, 8, 6, 4. Triple suited, we're defending the triple suited combinations with 0, 1, or 2 gaps 81% of the time, so very high number. So with 2 gaps here, you can see that we already have some connectivity, of course, because we max have 2 gaps. And if the bottom card is like a 4 or a 5, like we're defending most of these combinations still. With the rainbow ones, we need stronger connectivity. So the 2 gappers, we're not really that interested in anymore unless we have very high cards. But here, for example, 8, 7, 5, 4 rainbow is good enough to defend here. And we're defending overall 61% of the time here. If you look at single suited and rainbow combination with 3 card rundown and 1 Broadway, we can see that with a single suited combination, a hand like Jack 7, 6, 4 is good enough to defend here. With this category of hands, we're defending 69% of the time. So again, quite a wide number of hands. If the bottom card is like a 4 or a 5, we're defending most of these combinations. And if we have a deuce or a 3 in there, we need better connectivity, a higher suit. Those kind of elements become very important. With triple suited ones, like a hand like king 5, 4 deuce even is good enough. We have a king high suit, we have 3 low cards that are strongly connected, even though the category defend is only 64% of the time. Similar hands like this are simply good enough to continue with here, and you can go quite wide here. Rainbow ones with an ace, we're defending a hand like ace 8, 7, 5 rainbow. So the bottom card is a 5. We have an ace in our hand. 3 cards are strongly connected. We're only defending 7%. So it's a very specific group of hands, mainly focused on the hands that have an ace. And with side cards that are strongly connected here, we can call, like this one. Now, lastly, we're looking into single suited racked. Like this category is very wide, very big. This is a big group of hands, because there's so many disconnected hands in PLO. They all belong into this category. If we look at single suited ones, like even a hand like king 10, 8, 5, I mean, I imagine like most of us are folding this one because we lack in having a high suit, for example. I would call this one with a king high suit for sure, with a 10 high suit maybe, and this one I would probably just fold quite often. But you can see that hands like this are good enough to call, even though we are extremely disconnected, or at least we have many gaps in our hand. The fact that we have position, that the price is so good, just incentivizes us to play extremely wide here, and hands like this are becoming good enough here. We're defending 47% of this category with only 2 suits here. That means that if we have a high suit, we're always defending. If the bottom card is not a deuce or a 3 or a 4, like we're mostly defending. We can have gaps as long as there is some sort of structure in the hand. So this is an example of a hand that we are capable of defending here. With triple suited ones, we can go as wide as like 10, 9, 8, 4. Single suited with trip suits here. There's connectivity. We are in position as mentioned, and we're defending 41% of the time here. Lastly, with rainbow ones, to my surprise, we were definitely calling with a few of these hands, although the frequency is only 4%. There are specific combinations like this one that are decently connected that we can still call, and therefore you should keep an eye out for those. So overall, like the hands that I'm showing here today, they're definitely at the bottom of our calling range in terms of what we can expect to win with them. So all the hands here are at the edge of like calling and folding. They are winning a tiny amount of EV basically by defending. So if your opponent is suddenly stealing in the small blind much tighter, then these hands can simply be fold. But on average, these hands are a good category, or a good give a good idea of what you can defend. Now, what I recommend you to do, and today it's important to recognize that this episode, it's not about knowing all the combinations suddenly. I'm here today to provide you with some examples and give you some ideas and open your eyes about how wide we can defend. And it's not about now suddenly you have the solution. That's not possible because the defend frequency is so wide. I cannot provide you with all the answers or all the examples in one episode here. What's more important now is that you are aware now of the fact that we can defend all these hands, and that you now jump into the PLO trainer yourself and start training yourself for this specific situation. Setting up a big blind versus small blind training session is very easy to do. You want to create those buckets, 18 buckets. Look at these buckets as I showed you in slide 3, or slide 4, I think. Look at these buckets and get an understanding of what categories of hands are defending more or less, and then zoom into them. Start training on them, start understanding patterns, and understand like what is the edge, what characteristics are we looking for to defend. I already provided you today with a lot of examples and also with some principles and ideas on what characteristics you're looking for here. But jumping into this software is very important and will get you much further, much quicker, basically. So I hope you enjoyed this lesson. Big blind versus small blind steel is a very important topic, a topic where we can all go wider. And it's one of the best ways to widen and to increase our VPIP. We don't want to increase our VPIP by calling more hands, for example, in earlier positions. If we do it like big blind versus small blind steel is one of the best positions at the table to increase your VPIP. Keep that in mind, because I know some of you like to play more hands. This is one of the best categories, or this is one of the best situations to do it, basically. Hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions about it, as usual, make sure to use the comment section below or hit me up on Discord. For the rest, I will see you back next week for another episode here on the Crushing Small Stakes PLO course. My name is Luuk here for the PLO Mastermind.